I just realized something that I think I'm supposed to do. So I don't know if I'll record this again before I release it, or this will be the one, but let's do it. We're bridging the gap between hope and faith. Now, hope. Let's talk about what it is. Hope is the wish for something. It's when you don't have something, but you wish for it, right? So when you're in fear or lower vibrations that involve fear, pride, stuck in boxes, trying to conform, feeling restricted, things out of your control, hope can be very useful to regain balance in yourself, right? To give yourself reassurance that you feel like you may need, because you don't have a solid foundation from which to have a higher vibration than that. Because, there's a ladder of vibrations. So, until you've built yourself a tunnel to go from down under to up above, you take steps, right? And when I reference the tunnel, I'm talking about like an open central channel where you can just move these energies very quickly. And from what I hear, this is something that takes like Buddhist monks many years to do and things like that. So the step ladder is a useful thing, right? Hope is a useful thing, but it's not the highest vibration, because if you are in the vibration of hope, what you experience will be at the level of that vibrational scale that you're at. So being in the vibration of hope is very helpful when you are in fear and feeling disempowered. To come up to hope is so great, so useful, so important, right? But there is something above hope. And hope is like, something. You know that you have hope. You know that there's a possibility. It's the known. And the next step takes you into faith. And faith, it requires unknown. Now you're depending on your higher power. Something you can't see, something that you can't control. That's not up to you. You are trusting. So in order to trust, you're going to have to trust yourself. So that's one component that is needed for bridging the gap between hope and faith. Trust. And it's not trusting others, it's trusting yourself. So, for instance, if you have a lot of anxiety, that topic that you have anxiety about is a clue on where you don't trust yourself, what you don't trust yourself to handle. Okay? Why you don't trust yourself to handle something, it would be almost impossible to go into faith, because if the thing comes that you wanted to line up with, in the unknown, in the creation, you don't trust yourself to handle it. So why would you let yourself go there? No, you're going to stay capped under hope if you're still suffering from things like anxiety. So what is the topic that's giving you anxiety? Can you address the trust issue with yourself on that topic? That's going to require some shadow work. If you don't know about shadow work, that may be something to look into. So that's one thing. What we're doing is bridging the gap between hope and faith. So one thing is self-trust. Okay? So when you step into faith, you're going into the unknown. Now, if you are someone who likes to have control of a situation, if you like to know what happens, if you are very methodical and disciplined and thought out and maybe a perfectionist, those would all be blocks to stepping into faith. Right? Now, faith is where the creator is handling things. Faith is where you don't argue with what is anymore. That you have trust that this is orchestrated in a manner that is happening for you. So you no longer feel like a victim. When you're holding hope, there may be some parts of yourself that still feel victimized by the circumstances and experiences that you've had up to that point. And so those circumstances and experiences are awaiting your understanding. And some of them have been very unpleasant and very painful and very uncomfortable. So we have avoided them. And sometimes we're doing a lot of things to avoid letting those feelings come up again. And the way out, the way through hope into faith is going through those things that we haven't yet understood. Okay? Ooh. I'm just going to tap a little bit. Tapping is a wonderful way to move energy. So if you don't know about it, that might be something interesting for you. But while we're doing this work, while we're moving energy, it helps to tap these meridians to help the energy move, right? And I have other videos, or other videos where I've talked about where I got this tapping information from. There are many resources. Whew. Okay. Now I'm gonna use the oracle to assist me on the rest, because this is a homemade oracle that I made. So these are energies that I know about. This is a gap that I'm bridging me too. I'm bridging this gap too. So, we're bridging the gap between hope and faith. Okay, we are collecting those pieces of ourself that are still not understanding, that are still not trusting. Okay, and we are creating the space, the container, for us to understand those in. You know, everything that's keeping us stuck, everything that's keeping us out of trust, everything that's keeping us feeling like a victim is just an opportunity. It's just an indication that there's something more to be understood. Okay, and it helps to have, now what we're doing is creating the courage we need to take the leap of faith from hope to faith. A leap of faith. You need to take a leap. So courage is what's needed to take a leap. And how do you get courage? You kind of make yourself a net. You kind of make yourself a net, and then, you know, then you take the leap. But it's like the net is the self-trust. And the places that we don't trust ourselves are causing us anxiety. So that's where we see them, you know. And when we're not ready to see them, we may just call ourselves anxious, and period, and not understand that there's an answer and a solution to that. But when we are ready, you know, when enough of our puzzle, enough of our picture has been understood, we'll be ready to address those things even. Okay? When we're ready to let go of and accept things as they are, like we can accept it, like that's what happened, this is the experience you had, this is the reason why you don't trust, this is, you know, so we're accepting and validating, well, I'm sorry, we're acknowledging and then validating the reasons why we feel anxious, the reasons why we feel held back, the reasons why we don't trust. And then we are accepting it as it is. And love ourselves, fill our own cup up with love for the part of us that experienced that. For the part of us that may have been suffering in that anxiety. Love that part of ourselves that felt those ways, that was in that misunderstanding. And then this allows us to close out that cycle. Okay, so we won't keep repeating that feeling. Yeah, it's like the shining the full light on all the emotional components that made up that situation for you, and accepting them, even if they were painful. The most painful things are your doorway through. Going through and towards the pain is difficult and intimidating until and unless you have the tools to do so. And those tools do exist, okay? So, you know, learn about shadow work, learn about the people who are doing shadow work. There's lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of people sharing methods. Energy psychology. Dr. Bruce Lipton on his website explains energy psychology. There's a few methods of doing so. I just watched a video by, I don't know why his name is escaping me now, but Donna Eden's husband. I'm so sorry I just said your name in my other video today. Feinstein. What's his first name? I'm so sorry, I forgot the first name. But, okay, and taking responsibility for your limitations and your obligations. Yes. You know, it's again, it's acknowledging what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses. Validating, why are those your strengths, why are those your weaknesses. Accepting, these are my strengths, these are my weaknesses. Loving yourself for who you are. Like, maybe you never got that. Maybe you didn't have an upbringing that allowed you to have strengths and weaknesses. You know? Maybe that's why you don't trust. Maybe that's why you can't trust. Because you never validated, you were, you know, it's pretty common for us to look outside of ourselves for these things. And what we're doing now as a society, as a culture, is learning to look within for these things. And so now we're reparenting ourselves in a manner that allows us to close these circuits that have kind of been, you know, looping in a relentless and unsatisfying and painful way. Yeah, go with what's in front of you. Go with, like, you don't, like, it's whatever is in front of you. When it's ready to be dealt with, it'll be in front of you. You know, when you're ready to take this leap of faith, you'll know. Like, you may be intimidated, but you'll also know that there's nothing holding you back anymore. Because every time something comes up that's painful and that's restricting you, that's what the thing is that you're going to deal with. So that's a way to bridge the gap. Noticing the strength in your love and beauty, and appreciating all the beautiful things in life and in yourself and in relating. You know, spending some time in gratitude for those type things is very important, because it helps bring the vibration up so that you can get a clearer picture of things. And looking at all your relationships, you know, the difficulties in relationships, those are spots right there. Those are spots that are showing you a reflection of you. So what is it in that relationship? Is it good? That good is in you too. Is it bad? That bad is in you too. And is it really bad? You know, is it just something that's waiting for your understanding? And when we do misunderstand something, it's very, very common for us to project it out and see it in someone else instead of us. And that person is doing us a service by holding the space for that energy. Because until we're willing to see it in ourselves, we'll see it in someone else. But it's there. So if we're unwilling to see it in ourselves, it really is helpful and quite a beautiful service for someone else to show it to us. And whether it's in them for real or not, or if that was just your perception, is not your business. Like, your business is what can you do to deal with you and you. How you feel about that. Can you acknowledge, validate, accept, and love how you feel about that person? We've got 7 to 8 months, 3 to 4 years as time. So being patient with yourself, knowing that these come in cycles, knowing that this is a process. Yeah. Hang on a sec. I just had to cough, like a pretty big cough, and so what came to my mind on that is, like, expressing yourself. Like, where did you hold back from expressing yourself? Are the things that you need to express? And since we are, like, doing this between us and us, unless it is that you do owe someone an apology, maybe you just need to send a letter, write a letter that you won't send. You know, if you need to vent, write a letter that you're not going to send. You know, your spirit guides, your highest self, and your subconscious know And they're the only ones that really need to know. Unless you do have something to apologize for, then that will be sufficient. You know, being willing to cleanse, being willing to go through this purifying process of yourself. And getting to the point where you are comfortable shining your light, where you trust yourself to be who you are, where you trust that you have a light worth shining, when you are ready to be who you really are, who you came here to be. Yeah. And this is a step-by-step process, okay? So when you know that this is what you want to do, is go to faith, right? You might want to like just jump toward it and like take your leap without doing the groundwork. But this is to say, like, there is some groundwork to do, you know? Maybe you've been doing the groundwork and maybe you're at the point where you're ready to take the leap. You'll know better than me. But for those who are just beginning this process, you know, there may be a step-by-step process, and this may be ongoing. That's why we got these lengths of time. Okay, so give yourself time. And that is a very difficult concept sometimes when we're in an uncomfortable position of suffering and we just want to get to that higher place. But part of the process is learning to enjoy the process of life, because this will be an ongoing thing. It is an ongoing thing to learn to trust yourself in each experience, you know, and to understand each experience. Like, if you knew everything, then the process of living, what would it be for, right? Like, you are learning, growing, evolving, and so there's bound to be an unfolding of more and more and more misunderstandings that are actually just really propelling you and progressing you through your soul plan, you know, when you came to Earth. So, yeah, there it is. How does that feel? Does that feel complete? I want to say what needs to be said. Okay, anything that needs to be said about this process, Spirit? Oh, if at first you don't succeed, try and try again. Yeah, this is a process, so we may not do it right the first time, right? We may have a hard time. We may think that we accepted something in ourselves, but then it comes up again. That's really part of it. Like, anyone who's been doing this process knows that sometimes you get a surface layer and then another layer, and then like 6 months down the road there's another layer of it. But it's all divinely orchestrated. So the timing on when you unfold these things is perfect. So it doesn't mean you failed when you need to address something more than one time. You know, where these are all happening in cycles. When it comes up, you deal with it on the level that you're able to at that time. Judging others in their process, what needs to be said, judging others in their process is a reflection of us. Like, how dare you would really be like, how dare me? Like, why? Maybe one thing that needs to be dealt with is the guilt of taking these steps despite other people not approving or not understanding. You know, can you take this within yourself? Because if we're in a lot of anxiety, it probably means we've dealt with a lot of people not approving of us on a very deep level. Maybe they didn't take the time to get to know us on a deep level, and then they just projected whatever onto us, and then we just felt the energetics of that, you know. But so dealing with that in the beginning might be a thing, like other people's thoughts and judgments about how you're using your time, what you're willing to integrate, what you're willing to acknowledge, validate, and accept. And the other thing is, we go good together. And this brings me back to the first thing that came out, Isis. And it was like, she collected the parts. She collected the parts of Osiris that were scattered across the world. And I equate that to us collecting the fragmented parts of our souls that are looping in misunderstandings, waiting for us to collect them. So as we collect these parts of our misunderstandings, we're welcoming those parts back in. And we're saying we go good together. right? Because we're not just that part, we're this whole other part, we're this whole bigger picture. Like, so, you know how sometimes you can have anxiety in one instance but not in another? Like, here's a good example. It's like, I noticed this in myself before, and I noticed this in someone else yesterday. And it was that, you know, this person, or me in the past, could be very crippled under anxiety and not able to perform their own duties and obligations for self-care and responsibilities elsewhere. And because of anxiety, right? Crippling anxiety. But as soon as somebody else needs help, boom, into action this person goes. Now all of a sudden can do the things, can go in public, can go, you know, into places that would have been avoided if they were for your own purposes. But someone else needs help and you go into the rescuer mode. This is like weird, right? To some onlooker that didn't understand anxiety, but if you have anxiety and you've had anxiety, then you know that you can have situational anxiety. It's like, you know, if your priority is people pleasing, if the way that you get your value in life is doing for others, then stepping into the rescuer mode and bypassing everything that you needed may be something that's easy for you, easier than taking good care of yourself. Like because it's going to be a reflection of what you downloaded from the environment that you were in. Think about how the people around you acted. Is that what was emulated to you as acceptable? Is that what you adopted to survive a situation, right? So, and that is also a representation of abandoning self. So is there someone that abandoned you? That now you're emulating that energy? And do you need to now acknowledge that piece of you that had been abandoned? Validate that piece of you, like understand like what happened, why you were abandoned, like why it wasn't fair, how you feel about it, like all of that stuff, right? Validate that you feel abandoned because of this. That's what I mean by that. And then accept that is the case. You were abandoned. Accept it instead of fighting against it, instead of wishing it wasn't true, feeling a victim to it. Accept that that's true. You were a victim to that. That does not mean you have to stay a victim to it, but first acknowledging how you feel, however that is. And then love yourself in that place. Can you love that child part of you that feels abandoned? Okay? And until you do, you will relive it by coming up against experiences that cause you to abandon yourself. Like jumping to save someone else. See how that's an abandonment of self when you had needs and you had self-care things that you had been ignoring doing, but you could not get yourself to act in your own benefit because the energetic imprint that you had was of being abandoned. So you can only act when you're abandoning yourself, right? So by addressing this, by looking at it, by accepting it, you're then able to integrate that part of yourself. And like, that part of yourself is part of you. That part of yourself is useful. That part is not like, oh, this is terrible that this happened to us. Now this is a wise part of you that you're bringing into yourself. This causes you to have compassion and understanding. Now you're not one of those persons that judges that person for, like, you know, maybe not taking care of certain responsibilities but only doing things in that way. It's like, you know, onlookers can sometimes judge and project, right? But you're not going to be one of those people. You're going to be one of the people who can hold compassion for that because you know what that comes from and you know what that feels like. And you can hold space knowing that since you got through it, they can too. Now all of a sudden you're not a victim. You're not disempowered anymore. You're empowered, and you just being an example of that is helpful to anybody who looks at you. And probably people who were projecting on you before, they can't even put it there on you anymore. They're either going to have to take it back within themselves, So by that being that example, you're serving them in that way because they can't put it on you anymore. They can either take it back in themselves or find someone else. Now, certain people will just keep finding someone else when someone cleans up their act and like they can't put it on them anymore. They'll find someone else, find someone else. Maybe that's the pattern they finally notice, and they go, oh, I keep finding it in someone else. I keep finding it in someone else. And then maybe that makes them realize, oh, I'm the common denominator, you know? It's all perfect. It's all divinely orchestrated and working out in our favor. Okay? Anything else? Oh, there may be part of you that is like, where have you been? Like, why didn't you do this sooner? So acknowledge. But there's a part of you that felt like you let it down. You let yourself down in a way, right? Validate that, why it feels that way. Yeah, it does feel like a letdown when I don't answer to myself, when I don't listen to my body screaming out, when I don't pay attention to my suffering. Validate why it's there, like, and then accept it. Yeah, I accept this part of me that feels like it was put on a back burner for a long time. I accept its anger, I accept its disappointment. And it's welcome to be with me. I love it now. I love it. It's with me. We go good together. There's a bigger picture view, and I'm going to need that part of it. Yeah. Okay, this thank you for the gift has to do with celebrating all these steps. So as you do this, as you take parts of yourself back within yourself, as you integrate, celebrate how far you've come. Always celebrating each step, each small thing. You know, you're a person who always gets anxiety when the phone rings, and then you do some work around it, and then you don't. Celebrate that, you know? Every little thing, celebrate you. And be really soft with yourself, gentle through this process, understanding. Give yourself the parenting that you needed, not the parenting you got. And this doesn't say that your parents did anything wrong at all. You know, we're evolving as a society, so this is just where we're at, you know? This isn't like blaming your parents, they did everything wrong. This is like realizing that we're a society who passes along our environmental influences, and this is just part of it. So being very soft and gentle and understanding with ourselves, and offering ourselves that fresh view. That there's a new way we can see this now, that we've closed that cycle. Now that we have integrated this, now what could this imply? Where might we go from here? What could this imply was something that I got from Kyle Cease. If you've never looked at him, he's great. Highly recommend, and he offers a lot for free on YouTube as well. Okay, I'm going to close this here. This was a wonderful talk. I enjoyed doing it very much, and thank you for spending your time with me.